still joining in, and we are gonna start shortly. Okay. So, hello everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you all so much for being here today for our 8th Ohio McKinney-Vento Community of Practice session. And today's session will be about providing trauma-informed care to youth experiencing homelessness. And we will be covering a lot of content in the next hour. So let's go ahead. Please, if you can sign in your name and pronouns, name of your district, your role, and one word description of how you are doing today. So I'm Ami Diallo. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the Youth Housing Initiative Specialists here at COHHIO. And one word description of how I'm doing today, excited about this session. So please feel free to share that in the chat. Thank you. So a couple of housekeeping stuff, please ensure that you are all muted. Only speak when you can ask questions. Question can be asked throughout the session in the chat box, and we will try our best to answer as many questions as possible. And today's material link can be found in the chat shortly or on the COHHIO Course to Home web page, where you'll be able to find the recording and notes for this session by the end of the week. We won't be doing any breakout rooms today. We won't have any polls and quizzes today. If you find yourself leaving this session with an unanswered question, please do not hesitate to reach out on the, with the COHHIO team or today's guest speaker, and we will be sharing our email address and the guest speaker's email address at the end of this session. And if you have any audio or video issues, just try to exit and then try to come back in. Okay, next slide, please. So today's agenda will be about trauma among homeless youth, followed by practical practices, and as always, resources to support our students. Then we will wrap up our session with some Q&A, quick reminders about the COHHIO Course to Home. This is our wonderful COHHIO Course to Home. We've already provided a lot of introduction in the past, so we're not going to take a lot of time today. Our director will be joining us soon, Amanda Wilson, and I'm joined here by my wonderful colleague, Evelyn Guerin, and our awesome intern, Stella. And also, as always, we are joined by the wonderful team of ODEW, Brittany Miracle, Jordan Fab, and Ashley User, who are always here to support us. With that, we are thrilled to welcome our amazing guest speaker, Amy Hawthorne, from the Ohio Mental Health and Addiction Services, to tell us more about trauma among homeless youth. And now we're gonna pass it on to Amy, and she's gonna introduce herself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ami. As Ami said, my name is Amy Hawthorne. I am the Trauma-Informed Care Coordinator with Ohio Mental Health and Addiction Services. I'm very, very excited to be here today to speak with you all on trauma among homeless youth. Students have a very, very special place in my heart, and especially vulnerable populations of students. And so I'm very excited to not only share the information with you, but also hear from you and answer any questions that you might have. And then just to let you know, I will there will be a dedicated time after the presentation to answer any questions that you have. However, I am totally flexible if you have questions throughout the presentation, if you want to unmute yourself or raise your hand and interrupt me, that's totally fine to ask a question during a slide that you might that might come about once some information comes up. And so right now I'm going to start sharing my screen, and then I'll walk through the presentation with you all. Just give me a brief moment. And okay, so are you guys seeing the in presentation mode, or can you see my notes?
We can see the presentation.
Okay, but can you see like the notes section, or is it
It's
just the
a
slide?
We can see
mode.
you're not in presentation mode yet. We can still see the notes section. So once you play from the beginning, we should be able to see just your slides.
Okay. There we go. Thank
Perfect.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Okay, and then just to give you guys a brief heads up with my very first slide, I already have a caveat. I was supposed to do this presentation back in November, but I got sick. So thank you for the flexibility and letting me reschedule. However, because of the approval process for the slides going with the Ohio Department of Education, these slides were approved. And however, since November, we have gotten a new director. So our new director at the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services is Leanne Cornyn. So you'll see our former director's name up there on this slide. But since these slides were approved, I didn't go through the changing process, but you should note that we have a new director at our department. So thank you. So cultural and a trauma brief. And so I'm going to be very brief about this because I'm assuming that you guys have a lot of base knowledge. But research from the NASP, which is our National Association of School Psychologists Center, indicates that 43% of homeless students repeat a grade, 25% are placed in special education, and 50% are failing academically. According to research done at First 5 LA, youth who experience homelessness are 3 times more likely to encounter trauma, both as a result from their homelessness and the situations that cause them to be homeless. By age 12, 83% of children experiencing homelessness have been exposed to at least one serious violent incident, and almost 25% have witnessed intimate partner violence. Trauma, therefore, makes it more difficult for this population to lead healthy, stable lives, making it harder to break the cycle of homelessness. So as you guys are probably all very aware, trauma has a big impact on homelessness, and also in considering where the trauma might have occurred, if it was before, during, and then also if it's chronic trauma, or if it's compounded trauma, which we will get into as we continue. So just to sort of continue the conversation, I wanted to recognize where there's a familial breakdown and a system breakdown. And so some of the things that were considered familiar would be parental substance abuse or mental health problems, child abuse and neglect, familial conflict, family houselessness, or a youth rejected by their families due to their sexual orientation, gender identity, and or lifestyle. And we know from surveys, and we know also from working with Kaleidoscope, which is a great organization in Franklin County that serves our LGBTQ+ populations, that many students are forced out onto the street because their families are rejecting them due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. Now, on the other hand, a system breakdown would include some things like failure of child welfare, a failure of the juvenile justice system and or mental health systems, failure of foster care systems, or youth arrested for status offenses. So that would be something like staying out past a curfew or, you know, running away because they do not feel safe at home, running away because they're angry or upset. So that would be something that is a system breakdown and considered a status offense. And I wanted to bring attention to some common traumatic events, and these might include sexual abuse or neglect. This is when also something else is when a youth might experience violence or witness violence in their home between their parents and caregivers. It could also be the removal of the child from their home by protective services, or the incapacitation of parents due to a mental illness, substance misuse, and or incarceration. And often those things go hand in hand with each other. So sometimes a person, an adult will be, or a parent, a caregiver, will go through a criminal justice system process, or they'll be a part of a drug court because of their substance misuse, and they'll be home, and then they'll be getting treatment, and then they'll be home, and then they'll be getting treatment, and that cycle can repeat and repeat, which is very unstable and often traumatic for our youth. It could also, some other traumatic events include witnessing community violence, growing up in violent neighborhoods, being afraid to be outside and playing in their neighborhood, afraid of, you know, that they might get hurt, or that if they're riding their bike could get stolen, you know, different things like that. They might be experiencing violence in their own relationships, especially if they grew up experiencing a lot of adverse childhood experiences. We know that children can often engage in risky behaviors, which include sexual relationships with before they're ready. And people might be taking advantage of that, right? And they might be groomed in a certain way, such as human trafficking, or they might be recognizing or experiencing violence in their own relationships because they recognize that to be a normal or a norm for them if they have grown up around it. Additional traumatic events include harassment or violence due to homelessness, their sexual orientation, gender identity, physical and sexual assault on the street, and also incarceration. Okay, so there are different responses to complex trauma. And the thing to remember here is that everybody individually responds to complex trauma differently. So it's not always going to look the same on every person. And one thing that I like to remind people is that if you have met somebody who has experienced trauma, then you have met one person who has experienced trauma, because it is going to evoke different things from a person, and people will have different responses and expressions. So these are some responses. However, I want to just make sure that people are aware that it could be on a very, very wide spectrum. But we do know that people who have experienced trauma have difficulty sleeping and or eating. Oftentimes they'll say, you know, their stomach hurts, or that they have headaches, or that there'll be other health complaints. And if you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, is about how trauma physically affects the body, and that how there will be you know, physiological responses to trauma living in a person's body. And so some of those ways that can be a stomach ache or a headache or something else that is not listed here. Students and youth will also have the inability to concentrate or complete everyday tasks because their minds or their nervous systems are heightened. You know, they're worried, they're super vigilant, they get distracted easily. There also could be feelings of inadequacy and guilt. They might be, you know, they might be young and youthful in age, but they also might be a caregiver in their home to their parent or some of their siblings. And this might be putting a lot of burden and responsibility on them and thinking like, well, why can't I handle this? Why can't I take care of this? So there could be lots of different feelings going on there, lots of big feelings. And moving on to the next column, there'll be acting out or impulsive behaviors. Impulsive behaviors is a big one. And then there'll also be a lot of defiance. So that kind of goes along with the heightened moodiness and irritability. And you can't say, you can't tell me this, I'm going to question that, or I don't believe what you're saying. I'm going to defy kind of what you're telling me. And that is an effort to kind of, push anybody away. It's also a protective measure for that person, and it's all very environmental. And so the good news is there's a lot of resiliency that gets built up, and a lot of adaptation that also gets built up, and then knowing that environmental things might change, and so that defiance can go away often. And so that's where you guys come into play, and changing and creating positive and healthy environments. And in our last column here, our last expression of trauma that we're going to recognize is that some of the common responses to trauma can look like laziness or apathy, arrogance, or excessive anger, and that we need to be mindful that attitudes and behaviors that look like noncompliance may be responses to trauma. So some practical strategies, and I am moving along very quickly, and I also just want to recognize that I cannot see everybody in my presentation mode here. So if you have a question, please feel free to just interrupt at any time, because I can't see if you raise your hand or put something in the chat. So some practical strategies to think about, and through my research, what we have found to help youth feel safe, welcome, important, and worthy, these are all very, very possible, doable things, is that our first contact with all youth should be warm, respectful, and non-threatening. We want to use a voice that is very calming, that is showing that we're excited to see them, we're excited to welcome them into our space, and that we're happy that they're there, and that we want to be respectful. We want to make sure that we learn and can say their name properly. We want to know how they would like to be identified as a person, and maybe ask one thing about them, something that makes them unique, something that that they are going to bring to the table. Introduce yourself and describe your role specifically and directly in relation to them, so that they know exactly who you are and how you will be working with them. Because people who have experienced trauma, especially, homeless youth, one of the key elements here is understanding and setting up expectations. So, because if you'll have to repeat a lot of things over and over and over again. So be prepared to repeat information many, many times. And so you'll want to give them clear guidance and clear expectations, and that you might have to say those things over and over and over again until it kind of clicks or sticks for them. But you'll want to allow time for them to learn who you are, and allow time for you to learn about that young person and some of the needs and wants that they have. So it can be sort of short-term and long-term needs. And my last bullet point there is to assess immediate needs. So that would be addressing things like clothing concerns or food insecurity concerns, and saying things like immediate needs. You're not going to get a lot of response from a person, or a lot of feedback or engagement from a person who is hungry, right? So if they're hungry, maybe you can offer them something to eat so that they can kind of feel welcomed and settled in or something. So we do want to assess immediate needs, but we also want to allow time to think about those longer term needs and wants. So one of the key things here is that we're also going to want to provide expectations and structure in a matter of fact way. We don't want to really go into a lot of nuances, but we do want to explain why we do have rules in place and why we do things. So if somebody's acting defiantly or hitting another student, it's fair to say, we have rules set up here because in this environment, in my classroom, we don't want there to be any violence or hitting. And so we want to make sure that that we recognize that that's a rule that we keep into place because we don't want there to be violence in this environment. And so by bringing that to that attention to the defiant person or the person who might be hitting, it might raise their antenna and being like, okay, this is a safe place. This is a safe place, and help to understand why those rules are in place and explaining those in great detail. You also want to explain resources that are available, but this also is dependent on the age of the student. Because if it's a younger student, they might not understand exactly what resources are, but you can explain it in ways of like material things like food or clothing options that are available to them as resources, or different programmings, or different groups that they might be a part of. I wouldn't necessarily, and you guys are probably all well aware of this, of using the term resources, and you might want to have to dive in a little bit more specifically about what those resources are and explain those in greater detail. Oh, and yes, that next to last bullet point, being prepared for them to challenge you. It is going to be very, very, very challenging. We know that people who have experienced many adverse childhood experiences or trauma tend to be, they can be very defiant. They can be, they can present in lots and lots of different ways. They may not have their work turned in on time. They may not know where their work is. They may not have gotten their work out of their book bag and things like that. So everything could be a very challenging moment, but they can also be opportunities to learn and opportunities to engage with that particular student and learning more about them and their struggles, and thinking and humanizing them as a person and wanting to be more bonded and be a strong adult role model for them. So some practical strategies, and this is where I'm going to ask people to come off mute and help to think and workshop some ideas and thoughts that we might have. So I have some wrong ways here, but I want to open the door here for you guys to share what we can say instead. So the wrong way to say, the wrong way would be, hi, what's your name? How old are you? Why are you homeless? Do you have a social worker? Are you on probation? Please fill out these forms and return them to me. So I would invite somebody to come off mute and kind of say what we can say instead. So this would be an instance where you're first introducing yourself to a student who you think or have knowledge that the student is homeless.
Hi, I'm Janine. Tell me about yourself.
Thank you, Janine.
Hi, I'm John. Can I get you some water, or would you like a snack while we're meeting?
Thank you, John. Is there any reason why you guys didn't say like Mr. or Mrs.? Like, so I would like say like Miss Hawthorne, for example.
I'm an elementary principal, and typically I would be talking with the parent about these concerns. So I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I work with middle schoolers, so I don't really like being called Mr. John. I would rather just be called John. It could just be preference, but I also feel like it reduces like the power dynamic that they might see me as, so it makes it more easy to like build a bridge with them on helping them.
Thank you. I was curious. I figured it was intentional. Absolutely. So we just also, we want to recognize that if somebody who has experienced trauma, and if we ask them lots of questions, that is going to heighten their nervous system. Their nervous system is going to react. So the research says after 3 questions, that their nervous system is in reactive, that fight, flight, freeze space. And so it's like 3 specific questions about the same thing. So if we're just asking them question after question after question after question, then they're going to start to get nervous and they're not going to know how to respond. So we want to kind of keep our questions to a minimum, even though we're still trying to work through ways of gathering information. We want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that they're not getting reactive and their nervous system isn't heightened and that their heart rate is not increasing, right? And so we want to use a calm voice. And one of the biggest takeaways that I always remember, and I did not come up with this, but I always take it with me, is that a calm nervous system calms a nervous system. And I feel that that's always very good advice for, introducing yourself to people. Also with if somebody is starting to get reactive or if the situation is starting to get stressful, or if people are getting agitated and showing anger. But so I would stay away from lots of questions. And I think that John and Janine did a great job just by introducing themselves, and keeping it simple. And we just want to take it slow. And if you do have forms for this person to fill out and that they need to get back to you, you can talk through the process, right? And so you can say like, oh, I have some forms that, because, you're new here with us and, we're excited to learn about you and we're excited to be here with you and help you and all of that good stuff. And we just have some forms that we would like you to get back to us. Are you familiar with forms? Do you kind of know what these are? And you can walk through the forms and let them know what the forms are asking. And you can even, if you have time, go through the questions on the forms or say, these are just sort of the things that we're going to need information about. And we would like you to fill this out. Or we wouldn't like you to fill this out, but we would like, your caregivers to fill this out and you to bring it back to class with you and all the things like that. But we don't necessarily, if they're interested in the forms, so that's what I'm saying is like, you don't want to keep any information, like you're keeping information a secret, right? So you can walk through those questions if they're interested and if they're engaging, but otherwise, just be very sort of specific about your role in relation to them, and then try to use that opportunity as a bonding and learning experience so that you can help build a relationship with the youth. Okay, so homeless youth reported that they wanted, and then I got this information. I'll share all of my resources at the end of my presentation from the National Children's Trust Foundation. So this was specific to mental health providers, but I thought that it was also relevant for school staff as well. So homeless youth reported that they wanted their mental health providers to be non-judgmental, to have a good sense of humor. I thought that was very interesting. And that, they're looking for somebody that they can, have fun with. They're looking for somebody that is a lighter part of their day, right? They might be dealing with so many things in their home life and their personal life. And so you can be a light to them and have like a jovial sense of humor. They're looking for empowerment rather than enableness. So walking through any tasks with them so that they feel that they can do it rather than doing it for them. So say that is a form that they need to fill out. How can you walk through filling that form out with them instead of just filling it out for them? So offer choices instead of advice. And that would even be about, you could even offer choices into coming into their personal space. So what that would look like, and what I mean by that is like, is it okay if I sit down with you? Is it okay, which I'm sure that many of you guys are already doing anyway, but just offering choices so that they know that they can say no to things, because we're going to need them to say no to things, especially dangerous things. So we want them to be aware and that they have choices. and bodily autonomy, right? And so also saying, if I was you, I would do this. We want to stay away from something like that, because they're not you, right? And you haven't experienced the things that they have. So offering choices instead of advice is always very helpful. We want to always be building trust and being honest regarding confidentiality and the limits of confidentiality. So a lot of us are mandated reporters, and so we want to set up those confidentiality limitations and restrictions, immediately, so that they understand what they feel comfortable sharing with you and what they might not feel comfortable sharing with you. And that is going to go a long way with building trust. And they know if something is unsafe and you have to, share that information with somebody else, because that's your job and you want them to stay safe. So be patient, which is one of the things that I always have to remind myself every day. Be patient and not give up. That can be one of the hardest things. And so I find for myself, when I'm losing my patience, I kind of have a couple of coping mechanisms that I can go and step away and go and do for myself to sort of regain my composure, regain my patience, so that I can be showing up in a situation that is fair and honest. And that also kind of goes along with some self-awareness of who and how you are and how you respond and react in situations. You might also be aware of some of their own personal problems or personal issues that they might be going on. So in addition to homelessness or houselessness, they might feel very isolated. They might not have any friends at school. They might be very isolated. So recognize kind of what is going on in their personal lives as well. And always consider their behavior in the context of their life experiences, including their traumatic life experiences. And then the research is also showing, and you guys are probably all very well aware of this, is that we should be considering their life experiences in utero as well. So what that means is even before they were born, right? So what sort of maybe substance use disorders did their biological parents and caregivers have that might be contributing to the behavior that they're exhibiting in their everyday spaces. So we want to consider their behavior in the context of their life experiences and their life experiences in utero. And then, as always, prioritize their immediate needs. Youth with unmet primary needs may have difficulty focusing on forming and trusting people and forming trusting relationships. We always want to provide safety and comfort. So many homeless youth come to school to find a respite, right? This might be the only part of their day where they have structure, where they know exactly what's going to happen, where they know that their teacher and their principals and their school counselors are always going to be there and show up, where they're always going to have lunch. So many homeless youth come to school to find respite from being homeless. So the more successful we are at helping them feel safe and comfortable, the more likely they are to stay in school. So just, everybody's an individual, so safety can mean very different things to different people. A safe environment is one where people are treated with respect and feel safe in sharing the things that they are comfortable sharing. And also be aware of the environment. Is it overly aromatic? Because people who are on the spectrum, right? They might have a lot of stimulation, or they might have a big reaction to a lot of smells, or a lot of like brochures and things on the wall, or a lot of noises, right? So we want to think about the environment and the stimulation that might be occurring within the environment, and how does that feel safe for people. We also want to recognize that many homeless youth are hyper alert and vigilant, and that we need to recognize these as survival skills. and that youth can be re-traumatized and reminded of traumatic events by sounds, smells, and interactions. So one thing for us is to always, we always want to be in a space where we're solution oriented and calm and orient. And so that's how I frame this in my head for myself, and being solution oriented is we want to calm and orient, right? So that's the goal, is that we might want to enlist help from friends. Friends can provide a sense of familiarity and social support. We want to be aware that some youth are socially isolated and do not have any friends or peers that they trust, especially if there's a lot of moving around or a transient population. People are maybe on the go a lot, which is very common with our homeless youth. So they might not have had time to build strong relationships with people. And then especially if somebody is in a reactive state, we might invite that person, that student, to a different space. So we want to make sure that the space is not isolated, but respect a young person's privacy and give them a few moments to calm before asking questions. One of the things that I always recommend is taking a walk and going outside if at all possible. Trying to get some fresh air, walking and giving the youth or student something else to focus on, or giving them something in their hands that they can play with, something that they can draw their attention to while you have this conversation with them is always very helpful. So we're going to come from a place of concern and we're going to offer help. So calmly tell the youth why you're concerned, and say that you're there to help. And if they don't want help in that moment, say that you're interested in checking back in with them later, and then remember to do that. If we say that we're going to check back in with them later, let's make sure that we remember that commitment to do so and follow up. And again, sort of the calm nervous system calms the nervous system is remain calm, quiet, and present. So naturally, staff can get angry, upset, nervous, or frustrated, but it is important that you stay calm. When a young person is agitated or excited, don't try to engage. Let the person know that you're close by if they need you. So youth experiencing homelessness can appear anxious, agitated, or upset. These behaviors and these feelings can be common reactions to changes in their environment, and they may be indications of substance use, mental health issues, or traumatic experiences. Regardless of why youth behave in such a manner, you will want to calm and orient them as part of creating a safe environment. So some practical assistance is that based on information gathered, reflect on the needs the young person has identified and prioritized and available services. Homeless youth may have difficulty asking for help or being clear about what they want or need from you. So this is maybe a person who is not used to getting their needs met, right? So they don't necessarily know what that looks like. They might not know how to ask for the things that they need. And they might have very, very difficulty asking for help, especially if they're an older sibling and that is used to being a caretaker of younger siblings, or maybe their parents or caregivers. They may also, I'm sure that they're very, very unaware of all of the resources that are available, as we and adults are still also very unaware of all of the resources that grow and change on seems like a weekly basis. So people are not aware of the resources that, and they might also feel powerless to take any steps towards meeting their needs. This is especially true if they have grown up in a situation where they're witnessing or have experienced violence. They might feel very powerless and scared to ask for the things that they need, because that might have gotten them or one of their caregivers in physical harm if they had previously done so. So some harm reduction thoughts is it is imperative to implement social and emotional learning programs to educate homeless youth and all students on mental health. And why this is very, very important is that it helps to set up an environment where students feel comfortable sharing the things that they need. It helps to set up an environment where students are not making fun of the other students because they can recognize that, you know, somebody else, they have empathy. Empathy has been tailored and empathy has been discussed in a way so that hopefully other students aren't making fun of each other based on some of the needs that our homeless youth will have. It creates an environment where people can feel safe, right? So it's imperative to have those universal social emotional learning programs so that we're fostering an environment of care and empathy and help, right? So once educated with social and emotional skills, homeless youth are also, they're better equipped to ask for help and ask for the things that they need, because they might not have recognized that mental health is even a thing, right? And so now that they have the language and can recognize that mental health is a concern, they might have the language and be better equipped to ask for help. So giving homeless youth access to mental health professionals who can teach them how to cope with their trauma, right? Because sometimes a lot of the big complex issues are things that we cannot fix, right? But we can definitely give regulation tools. We can give, we also have, you know, regulation kits that we can give students to help them think about working through all of their big feelings and the traumas that they have experienced, and how we can give them some tools that can help them. Those can be those small details can go a long way. We want to also offer mental health first aid training for all staff working with homeless youth. And mental health first aid, and I know that you guys are kind of all over the state, but I know that if people were interested in mental health first aid training for their school or area, reaching out to their county mental health board would be the first avenue that I would take. And if you have some trouble finding that, you'll have my email address and you can always reach out to me for things like that too. Okay, so just a few more minutes here, just a couple of more slides we have. So some more harm reduction thoughts are: identify offering social emotional education, what we just discussed. We want to increase access. We want to know the available resources and provide warm handoffs when possible. Just imagine it could be scary for somebody to go to a new place, or especially if they're asking for help. So we want to provide that warm handoff whenever possible. We want to increase education for all of our staff. And our next best options always include kind of creating a space for rhythmic exercise, mindfulness, or finding support systems, and create inclusive spaces. So one thing that we all have the power over is creating that space in our room, in our school, so that they know that there's a place where they can go and kind of do some breathing exercises, or listen to one of their, I want to say podcast, but that is so out of touch for youth. I'm sorry. That's what I do myself personally. Or, you know, something that will help regulate the emotions. We can all create one of those spaces. Additionally, all research suggests that prevention is the most effective measure in eradicating trauma, but it is far more difficult to just do that, right? Prevention starts with treating the existing trauma within homeless populations, which helps people rise out of homelessness situations so that children can have better futures without trauma. And a lot of that goes with helping people erase the shame and stigma, because a lot of people, a lot of adults probably have substance use disorder, addiction And so this is not like what they wanted for their children, right? This is not the ideal home or situation that they've wanted for their children. And so kind of helping to eliminate shame helps people to share more. And when people feel connected to the systems, then they are more likely to stay with the resources that are available to them. They're more likely to stay engaged, right? And so it's all about relationship building, and it's all about being non-judgmental and showing people that, you know, it's not their fault, and that you know, we're all going to just kind of hopefully figure this out, and that we have a lot of resources available, but it's going to take a lot of support on both ends. Okay, so we're going to walk through a couple of scenarios, and I want you guys to, after I read this, take yourself off of mute and share some of your thoughts in regards to our first scenario here. So Joe is a 17-year-old who has been in your school for 3 months. Joe and his caregivers have had difficulty bringing his vaccination records and other important documents to the office. Often Joe comes to school in the same clothing as the day before and without his book bag. You're trying to determine if Joe and his caregivers are experiencing homelessness. What are your first steps, and how can you make your approach trauma-informed? What do you guys think? What are some things that you would do?
Okay, everybody's kind of quiet. So I think for me, because we did have a situation similar to this, and we're very fortunate in a large district, so we have vaccination clinics on site, we have things like this. But I think the first thing I would do would just bring Joe in and just sit down and make sure they're okay. Like, obviously there's something going on. I'm here to support you in whatever way you deem necessary. And if I can help you, if it's, you know, washing your clothes, if it's finding clothes, what is it going to take to help you feel whole for a few minutes? So for me, in the situation that we had, we sat down with the kiddo and just kind of formed a relationship where they knew that I could try to help them find what they needed to have a complete day, a better day. And sometimes it was only 5 minutes of, you know, success in finding things, but they knew that we were, even after the kid left the district, he still called me and was like, I need help getting food stamps. Okay, then let's help you get food stamps. But it was like establishing that bond.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's so awesome. And bravo to you. Thank you for, you know, explaining that process that you went through, and, you know, sharing the follow-up. And I know that some of our districts are very privileged in that we get to have those on-site vaccination clinics. But even if that isn't the case for some of your districts, it is important also to kind of recognize where those vaccination clinics might occur within the community. So that if the person does need a vaccination, that we kind of know how to give like the warm handoff. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Joe. Okay, our next and final scenario is that Charlie's family has experienced homelessness in the past. However, they have recently moved in with extended family. You thought the situation would improve Charlie's demeanor and mental health, but you're noticing her acting out and being more aggressive with peers while also isolating and becoming quieter. You and Charlie have a great relationship, and you feel that she trusts you. How might you approach Charlie in a trauma-informed way?
I would hope that it's not the first conversation that Charlie and I have had. So I'd build upon our relationship or seek someone out if I don't have a relationship with Charlie, and share what I've noticed so that we could open some dialogue with her or with them. Want to make sure that, we're aware of what's been happening. And if we were aware of the move, then perhaps we have been more aware of the relationship and are able to tap into that a bit.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And I would say, in addition to all of the wonderful things that you mentioned with the relationship building, is that also bring their other school champions on board, which I think that you were hinting at. So other people in the school who might have a relationship with Charlie that is an adult, right? That is a part of the administration or a part of the faculty staff that might be champions of Charlie, so that you all can sort of have a little powwow and say like, oh, I've recognized this. Have you recognized that? Or, how have you seen her changing? And so you can sort of talk through with other people and brainstorm and figure out, your next best steps. Okay, and then here is when I've just opened it up for you guys to discuss any scenarios that you might have encountered or want to talk through, as we have like a wealth of knowledge on the call. And then the next slide that I have is just the resources that I will share with you all. But this is an open time for questions or scenarios that you might have.
This is just kind of a random question, but what training do any of the other districts or groups do with their building staff to make sure they understand how to start these conversations? Because my buildings, when they do get a parent that indicates it, it's like suddenly they become petrified to have the conversation. So how or what are you guys doing to train your staff to get them better, in a better situation to be the first line of contact?
I'll leave the floor open for other building staff to help answer that question, Joe.
I'll come off the mute. This actually came up in my leadership meeting this morning about the proper chain of command and the processes. And so what we're going to do here at Whitehall is really put together like a flow chart for staff to know who would be that point person that they need to send the child to, or who needs to intervene, that trusting adult in the building. Because what's happening is you're having these different scenarios to where we're not showing empathy, or we're being offensive, or we are not sure what questions to ask as it relates to the guardian, the child. And so here at Whitehall, I'm putting together a flowchart process, and then during our administrator updates, just providing updates on what the process should look like, and making sure that those individuals are trained and equipped with the resources and support for the families and the student during the day, and sometimes after hours as well.
We address it with our staff at every opening staff meeting at the beginning of the year, like how you communicate with parents and the students, and then kind of the same thing, like almost like the flow chart of like where to turn in your building, like who handles this stuff.
To piggyback off that, I would say our building is trying to become more just trauma aware in general, because a lot of these things you can be using universally through different types of trauma. So it makes it not as difficult then when this situation presents itself, because you're already in the mindset of how to deal with different trauma, situations in a trauma-informed way.
My district has also brought in a speaker from, I believe she's through Akron Children's, Missy McLean, and she talks about trauma and about ACEs, and she relates it back to our staff for them to get their own personal view of how trauma has affected their lives that maybe they weren't sure about. And when we bring our speakers in, they talk about it in a way that relates to the staff individually, but also turns it back to, okay, if you've had these experiences, assume that other people have probably had experiences. So how can we come to the table and talk to people with empathy and talk about how to build rapport? And we tell everyone that building rapport is our number one. Start with getting any kind of connection with the students, but that if it becomes a bigger conversation where it's beyond rapport and there's a problem, there's a need, each building has at their opening staff meeting and throughout the year at our staff meetings, reiteration of who to go to in the building, which is typically our guidance counselors. And at that point, if they don't already have rapport with the student, they start building that rapport with the student in order to have those conversations.
Thank you. And you all just reminded me of something. There is a place called the Mayerson Center, and I'll put it into the chat. It's the Mayerson Center, and it is out of Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and they have free online virtual trainings that people can take at their own on their own time. And what Trumbull County, I don't know if anybody is on here from Trumbull County, but Trumbull County, they have their own trauma-informed care coordinator there. And so she set it up in a way that if all of the teachers, they were able to obtain some funding so that teachers were incentivized to take the training on their own time. It was free from the Mayerson Center, but they wanted to incentivize the teachers and pay them for taking the training. And I will send Ami an email with all of that information and the funding that they used and how to access those free trauma-informed care trainings from the Mayerson Center. We did have the Mayerson Center doctor come and present at one of our monthly meetings, and they offer those trainings free for educators because they want, because the information is so important, that they're reaching people, and so that people are understanding and recognizing that most of our students are coming to school, and most of the people that we're interacting with have experienced some sort of adverse childhood experiences. So I'll make sure you guys get that good information.
Well, thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you all. And I will send a follow-up email that has my resource slide and then all of the information that I just spoke about too, so that you guys can have some leads. But I'm also available if anybody ever has any questions too.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, and thank you to all of you for being here and for participating. Ami put the feedback link in the chat, so please, if you have a moment, click on that form and give us some feedback about the session. What?
No, I was like, thank you so much, Amanda. Our next session is like soon on February 7th, and it's going to be a panel of a showcase of our local liaisons. So you are all invited. You will receive the announcement soon. Again, thank you so much, Amy. That was such a great session. Thank you. I hope you all have an amazing rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.
If you'd like a PD certificate, you can request one by filling out the feedback form that was linked, and that feedback form will also be linked in our follow-up materials. Those will go out to our listserv. So if you don't get it today, you'll get it on Friday and you can use it then. But if you need one of those certificates, that's where you can request one.
Bye, everyone.